Okay, my watch shows me to be 1 minute after the hour, so I think we'll go ahead and get started with this online information session regarding the NEH Awards for Faculty at HBCUs program. This is an opportunity to find out more about the program and to ask questions. And the notice of funding opportunity was posted, and the deadline this year is April 13th, 2022. The notifications for the program will be made in late December 2022 for projects starting as early as January 1st, 2023 or later. A quick introduction before we get started. I'm Mary Macklem, a program officer in the NEH Division of Research, and I'm the team lead for the 3 awards for faculty programs. I'm a musicologist by training, and I've been at NEH for just over 10 years. I'm joined here today by 2 of my colleagues, Jacob Lusk, who is the program analyst for the program, and Daniel Perry is an NEH Grants Management Specialist. And the 3 of us are here today to help answer any questions you might have about the program. I'm going to turn first to Jacob to let him say a word of hello and tell you about his role.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jacob Lusk. I'm a program analyst in the Division of Research Programs with Mary. I've been working with the Awards for Faculty program for about 3 cycles or 3 years. So I'm happy to help you out. Today in the webinar, I will be answering any questions that you submit. There should be a questions tab in the Teams window that you can use to send a question directly to me. And I'll answer. I would ask if it's something very detail-oriented that may not be able to be answered quickly. You may want to send us an email at facultyawards@neh.gov. But otherwise, please feel free to use this form, and I may answer you directly in writing, and we may also answer it verbally at the end of the session when we take additional questions. But thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Jacob. And I'm going to have Daniel say hello.
Hi, y'all. I'm Daniel. It rhymes with flannel Perry. I am a grants management specialist in the Office of Grant Management. So my office works with all of the different programs, including this one. I could be your contact. It could be somebody else. But if you have any questions about non-programmatic aspects, they would go to the Office of Grant Management.
Okay, great. Thank you, Daniel. And thank you both for being here together. And we're very happy to be here with all of you out there in the audience. My plan today is to speak about 35 minutes about the program. And then we'll spend the remaining time answering your questions or some commonly asked questions. Also, just to let you know, the webinar is being recorded, and an updated link to the recorded webinar will be posted on the Awards for Faculty program page on the website, the NEH website, within 1 to 2 weeks. So please check back there if you're interested in viewing the recording. With that, I'm going to go into a full screen view so that you get a better view of our slides today to talk a little bit first about our agenda today. First, I'm going to give an overview of the program, discuss eligibility, explain the goals of the program, show you the review criteria, look at the required application materials, and then explain how to submit your application through grants.gov. As I mentioned previously, and as Jacob also indicated, feel free to type in questions at any time, and we'll answer them along the way, or more likely we'll put them on at the end of in the question section of the webinar, but you're free to enter them at any time. On this slide, I've also posted here the program webpage, and it has all of the information that we'll be talking about today, including the notice of funding opportunity, the guidelines for the program. So please be sure to look at that link. With that, I'll move to the next slide, which is the goals of the program. So the program seeks to strengthen HBCUs by encouraging and expanding humanities research opportunities for individual faculty and staff members. The program supports an individual pursuing humanities research in all areas of the humanities, regardless of geographic or chronological focus. Projects can be designed for various audiences, whether other scholars, undergraduate students, the general public, or some combination thereof. A hallmark of the program is flexibility. Recipients can pursue projects part-time or full-time or in combination, and I'll say more about these aspects later on in the presentation. In addition, please note there is no cost sharing and funds go directly to the individual faculty or staff members. There are no indirect costs. With that, I wanted to show you some recent projects funded through the program to give you an idea of the kind of projects that have been supported in preceding competitions. The first project, Unbinding Gentility, is by Candace Bailey of North Carolina Central University. It's a historical study of Southern women and music during and just after the Civil War. The applicant requested and received 12 months of full-time support for writing and research in archives throughout the South of the United States. And the book was published in 2021. The second is a literary study authored by Robert Azzarello, a professor at Southern University of New Orleans. And this book addresses literary aspects of decadence through analysis of the city's 300-year history across different genres and languages. And Professor Azzarello requested and received 10 months of half-time and 2 months of full-time support. So he used the flexible work plan option, and his book came out in 2019. The third on the screen is a historical study of Perry County, Alabama in the Reconstruction era. The author, Burtis English, is a professor at Alabama State University, and he requested and received 24 months of half-time support for his work on this project. And this book came out in 2020. So just to address first off, what are the humanities? What is the definition that NEH goes by? And I've listed here the academic fields or areas of inquiry that are indicated in our founding legislation. The NEH and the NEA were created by Congress in 1965. And the humanities fields on this slide come from the National Foundation on the Arts and Humanities Act of 1965, and it reads as follows. The term humanities includes, but is not limited to, the study of the following: language, both modern and classical, linguistics, literature, history, jurisprudence, philosophy, archaeology, comparative religion, ethics, the history, criticism, and theory of the arts, those aspects of social sciences which have humanistic content and employ humanistic methods, and the study and application of these fields. So just to give you an idea, sometimes we're asked, we have a very capacious view of the humanities at NEH. And on the pictured here are some of our agency magazines covers. In terms of eligibility, all full-time, part-time, adjunct, and retired faculty and or staff affiliated with an HBCU are eligible. You can consult the White House Initiative on Advancing Educational Equity, Excellence, and Economic Opportunity through Historically Black Colleges and Universities for a definition of HBCUs and links to the institutions, and that's what we go by at NEH. You can find out more about eligibility in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. The program's open to U.S. citizens and to foreign nationals who've been living in the U.S. for the 3 years preceding the April 13th, 2022 deadline. No advanced degree is required. However, you may not be currently enrolled in a degree program. If you are, and you plan that you will be completed by the application deadline, you can apply this year, but you would need to include a letter from the dean of the conferring school or your department chair attesting to your status as of the application deadline. So now to look at some of the key program details. I have several slides that will look at various aspects, the first being important dates and deadlines. NEH staff will read and respond to draft narratives and work plans. Draft narratives and work plans must follow the format specified in the Notice of Funding Opportunity on pages 10 through 12. Drafts must be submitted to the Faculty Awards at NEH.gov email box no later than February 16th, 2022. The comments provided by staff are not part of the formal review process, and they have no bearing on the evaluation of your proposal, but previous applicants have found them helpful in strengthening their applications. But submitting a draft is entirely optional. The program deadline for applications is April 13th, 2022. The NOFO explains how to submit your completed application package through grants.gov. Be sure to allow enough time for any technical difficulties or other issues. We recommend you register for grants.gov now and submit your application well before the deadline in case of any difficulties of various kinds, because late applications will not be reviewed. So we don't want you to miss out. So please go ahead. You can register for grants.gov today, tomorrow, whenever. You can do it as early as you can, and then you'll be ready to submit your materials on that deadline. Decisions will be announced December 2022. The earliest possible start date for projects is January 1st, 2023, but you can wait to begin your project all the way through September 1st, 2024. So you have a large window of time to begin your award period. So the next screen shows you, I talked in the beginning about a hallmark of the program being flexibility in both work plans and the types of projects supported. So let's look at the types of projects on this slide. You'll notice from this list, all projects are based on humanities research in literature, philosophy, history, and so forth, the disciplines that I had on the previous slide, for example. However, the program supports humanities research that supports a variety of project types and goals and outcomes. Like the NEH Fellowships program, with which some of you may be familiar, this program supports research in primary and secondary materials that lead to the development of books, peer-reviewed articles, digital materials, translations with annotations, and other scholarly resources. However, research projects can also support institutional or community goals or interests, or draw on institutional or community archival collections, for example. Also, you can improve an existing undergraduate course through a course revision project based on humanities research. A faculty or staff member might collect oral histories in order to develop scholarly tools like language dictionaries or databases, or to contribute to an undergraduate course revision. Or a faculty or staff member might use the unique archives of a university for a project with an institutional goal or interest. A recently funded course revision project, for example, examined connections between Italian, Spanish, and Latin American cultural heritages for a class in Italian culture and language study. And I would just say, if you have questions about a project idea, something you're working on, and you wonder if it fits the goals of the program, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, either on the email listed there, or you can call our number and ask to speak to myself or to Jacob, and we'd be very happy to learn about your project and help you think about it with regards to this program. The second aspect of flexibility that I referred to earlier is the work plan. And in this program, you may work between part-time, which we define as half-time, at least half-time, and full-time on a project, or in combination. The period of performance must be continuous, and the award tenure is between 2 to 12 months, full-time equivalent. The work plan must be submitted as a separate attachment 2. It should be no longer than a single page and state clearly in the work plan the amount of support requested, whether you plan to work part-time, full-time, or in some combination. Also take care to list dates correctly when filling out the application form, application form 1, form for federal assistance, because we'll use those dates to determine your award if you are offered an award. Part-time work's defined by NEH as at least 50% of your normal schedule. So as an example, if your teaching load and administrative load is typically 4 classes per semester, and you apply to pursue the NEH project half-time, your teaching schedule must be reduced to 2 classes per semester. Administrative loads, etc., should also be reduced accordingly. The NEH stipend is reduced accordingly if you work part-time on the project. Be clear in your narrative and your work plan regarding how much support you are requesting so that panelists can evaluate your work plan. And be very specific. What work on the project has been completed already? What work will you do during the award tenure? Break the work down into 2 or 3 months increments. And if you'll be visiting archives, indicate which archives or sources you'll consult. If you'll mainly be writing a book, indicate which parts of the book will be written and when. Also, you do not need to complete the project during the period of the award. You should indicate to reviewers, though, how and when you will complete the project once you resume your typical duties at your campus. This slide shows some typical activities that can be supported through this program and some typical outcomes, either print or digital products. So a wide range of methods and activities can be supported, including archival research in local or distant repositories, collection of oral histories, and ethnography. Or you might be working from a home or university office on editing, writing, and revision. No budget is required in this program, and you should not submit one. Looking now at the print and digital products that might result from this award, I've put an asterisk next to the first item, undergraduate course revisions, in order to emphasize that this award cannot support new courses, but it can support a revision of an existing course. Also, just note it has to be an undergraduate course. It cannot be a graduate course. Other products that result from this grant are articles, monographs, translations, editions, and other interpretive tools. For course revision projects, you might devise a way to disseminate the project more broadly beyond your single course, whether for other course sections on campus or to other universities. Products centered on community or institutional goals might result in other types of print or digital materials. One example might be research and writing of an exhibition catalog for an art or historical exhibit on campus. So now we can look at the review criteria. So we've talked about the program details and the goals of the program and looked at some of the recent products that have resulted. Now let's look at how your application is reviewed. So you've submitted your proposal, it's a complete application, you have all your elements. What happens next after that April 13th deadline? One of the main things to be aware of is that all proposals at NEH go through a multi-stage peer review process. And you can find out more about the peer review process on our website, the NEH website. Here's a slide with the criteria for this program. And these appear on page 17 of the Notice of Funding Opportunity. You should keep these prominently in mind when you're writing your proposal, as all reviewers will assess your project using these criteria and only these criteria. The first one pertains to the intellectual significance of the project for the humanities. Tell your reader what your project is about and why it's important. You should explain what it will contribute to your specific field or the audience that you are trying to reach in a way that a humanities generalist can understand. You should also situate your project in the broader context of humanities research and knowledge. Describe who will use your publication or grant product and for what kind of work. Criterion 2 addresses the quality of the conception, definition, organization, and description of the project and the clarity of expression. Generally, peer reviewers find a well-written, clear application is a predictor of the quality of the planned publication. So writing a good abstract and narrative is important. Propose specific research questions and explain the methods, concepts, and approaches that you'll pursue to address them. Similarly, if special digital or other technologies will be employed, explain how and why you will use them. Describe and justify the sources for your project, the archives, texts, objects, interviews, and so forth. Number 3, and we already kind of went over this, is the detailed work plan, broken into 2 to 3 month segments perhaps. It can be a chart, a list, a narrative, but make sure it's clear. Your work plan should clearly state whether you're seeking part-time, full-time, or a combination of support, and this should be clearly indicated in the work plan. Criterion 4 asks reviewers to consider the applicant's preparation for the project. If it's a new research area for you, explain how you came to it and your skills for taking it on. And be sure to address your language competencies, knowledge of archives, and so on. The last criterion pertains to the likelihood that the project will be completed and the dissemination and access plans. Mention the expected publication and other outcomes of the project. If you're proposing a book project, provide a description of the proposed book, such as the chapters and so forth. If you have a publisher or a series in mind, you can mention this. If you're proposing an article project, I indicate the likely length of an article and the venue for publication. And you can see more about this in the NOFO. So moving on to, so that's how your application will be reviewed. What do you need to submit for a complete application to this program? I have cut and paste on this slide the application component table directly from the Notice of Funding Opportunity. So you can look at it there, it's on page 6. And that section D takes you through the entire application package, what you will need for a complete application. So the first thing you can see is that the first 3 are forms on the grants.gov website. The remaining materials are attachments that you can write offline and save as PDFs in advance of your application, loading that application. Have them ready to upload when you're ready to submit. The 4th column in this table lists whether the component is required, recommended, or conditionally required. If it is conditionally required, you should only submit the items described in the Notice of Funding Opportunity, and I will talk more about many of these components in the next slide. Please be aware that applications that exceed page limits or violate format instructions will be considered non-responsive and will be rejected from further consideration. For example, if you include a narrative that is longer than 3 pages, your application will be declared non-responsive and your project will not be evaluated. So please check the details. We really don't like to declare proposals non-responsive and incomplete, but this table hopefully will help you to figure out if you've got the materials you need. You can write, as I mentioned, you can write and assemble all of the attachments without being signed into grants.gov. The grants.gov forms, however, do need to be completed there in grants.gov. Files should be named and attached as indicated. So, for example, attachment 1 should be called narrative, attachment 2 should be called work plan, and so forth. Also to note, these files must be PDFs or they'll be rejected. So if you submit a .doc or a Word file, those will be rejected by grants.gov and your application won't be go further in the process. So just be careful with all the details of these kinds of things. And I have a couple links here that hopefully are helpful as well. So let's look at a few of these attachments in a little bit more detail. Attachment 1 is the narrative, as I showed you in the past screen. So that's right here in the middle of this table. So this is something that you can write offline and work on it and then save it, convert it to a PDF so that it's ready to upload. The narrative should address 4 areas, and these are described in the Notice of Funding Opportunity, pages 10 through 12. You'll notice these pertain to the criteria for the program that we discussed in a preceding slide: significance and contribution, organization and methods, competencies, skills and access, and final product and dissemination. The overview and the significance, it's very important to make that case. Identify the audience for your project, explain why it's significant to the humanities, state your thesis, provide the scholarly context. What work has already been done on the topic? What's the state of research? How will your work contribute? Will it build on, disagree with, or provide a new interpretation? If you are proposing an undergraduate course revision, explain how the research relates to revising the course, such as the readings and the methodologies. Address the significance of the course in your teaching and for your institution, and also provide information on how many times the course has been offered, the number of students typically enrolled, and so forth. And when possible, explain the broader significance of the project beyond the individual course. The second area, organization and methods, here you should explain concepts and terminology and how the final project will be organized. You can provide a brief chapter outline. If you're proposing a dissertation revision, you must state that in the narrative. Explain how the project moves beyond the dissertation, whether new chapters, new primary sources, new research, and so forth. The third area, competencies, skills, and access. Address your level of competence in any language, skills, digital technology needed for the project. Address any arrangements you have made or will need to make in order to access archives, collections, institutions, and so on. And lastly, you should describe the final product and dissemination plans. How will you reach the audience that you intend to reach? How will your project results be disseminated to them? Provide a URL if there is a website, and also consider sustainability of that web material. In the case of a course revision, explain if there are plans to expand the number of sections offered, replicate the course on other campuses, or otherwise disseminate the results more broadly. On this screen, I have some of the other attachments. So again, if you're looking at this application component table, we talked about attachment 1, the narrative. On the next screen, I have some information about the next attachments. So required attachments are the work plan, which we discussed previously, the bibliography, which is a one-page document. Sources should show the range and the scope of the project, and both primary and secondary sources are helpful to include. This gives panelists an indication of the scope of the project. The next item there is the resume. It's a 2-page document. I know a lot of academic CVs are lengthy, but this is a strict 2-page limit. And the NOFO indicates areas that you should include on that. In the next section here, we've got a recommended attachment, the confirmation of institutional support. That's new this year, being a recommended document at the time of grant application. Last year, you had to have it; it was required. Now, we would like you to submit it at the application deadline. If you do not, you would need to submit it before an award can be made to you. Include a document on letterhead confirming institutional support, signed by an institutional representative, such as staff in the Office of Sponsored Research, a vice president or dean. And this document should indicate that the institution will allow you to accept an award for faculty if offered, even if it reduces your teaching load. And then we have next here the conditionally required attachments, and I have not listed those here individually. Please do see the notice of funding opportunity. In particular, applicants proposing additions, translations, database projects, proposals with visual materials, proposals to improve existing undergraduate courses, you will likely need to submit additional materials under these so-called conditionally required attachments. These appendices should not exceed the page numbers per item, and these are all listed in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. So please take care to look at that. Other conditionally required documents include the conferral of degree document if you are a student and planning to finish by the application deadline. Also, if you need to submit the explanation of delinquent federal debt, that would fall under those. Important to note, applications with any other appendices will not be reviewed. So don't include anything that is not specifically described and required, recommended, or conditionally required in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. A few other things that you'll need to have ready when you go to submit your application on grants.gov. There are 2 forms, grants.gov forms, that are part of the application package. And those were listed in that application component table. When you fill those forms out, you'll need to have ready the following. So you could write these offline, for example, and then be ready to cut and paste. You'll need a 1,000-character abstract of your project and a project title. You'll also need to have ready contact information for 2 letters of reference. Once you submit your proposal, and if it's a complete application and so on and so forth, NEH will then contact your listed referees using the emails that you have provided on this form and solicit those letters directly from the referees. Typically those letters are due in early May. This year it will be May 4th of 2022. Just a reminder, no budgets required and you should not submit one. Just a word of warning, I've emphasized this in a few of the preceding slides. I've taken these bullet points directly from the Notice of Funding Opportunity, just to advise you that any required documents that are missing or anything that's conditionally required will be considered incomplete and will be rejected if you're missing those. Applications that exceed page limits or violate formatting instructions will be considered non-responsive and will be rejected also. And lastly, do not include any other attachments other than those required or conditionally required in the Notice of Funding Opportunity, because doing so will result in NEH rejecting your application. Just to clarify here, we did have that one recommended document, the confirmation of institutional support. You can have that and submit it with your application. We would welcome that, in fact, at the time of application. But if you do not have it ready at the time of application, you will not be declared incomplete. You'll need to submit it if offered an award. So let's move on to the mechanics of submitting your application and how that process works. So we've looked at what constitutes a full application package. We've talked about the importance of page limits, what these attachments should include in the case of the narrative and the work plan, for example. So now let's say you've got all of your documents ready. You've saved them all as PDFs. You've created an abstract for yourself and a project title, and you know who your two referees are who you want to enter their information. At this point, you're ready to submit the proposal and write those online forms as well. So first thing, as a reminder, register with grants.gov well before the deadline. The deadline is April 13th, but you can register today so that you don't need to worry about that piece of it. It can sometimes take some time for that registration to go through, so do not leave it to the last moment. The second thing to just make you aware of is that you must create an individual applicant profile in your account on grants.gov. Grants.gov, I believe, is used to seeing institutional applicants such as your HBCU or such as a museum or something like that. They're less, but you have to notify them that you are an individual by filling out the individual applicant profile. And then at that moment, you will be able to apply clicking on that red button that I've circled with a red circle. Next, be sure to submit the application early to allow time for technical problems. For example, grants.gov can get very busy at the time of a deadline. There might be some waiting and pausing while you're uploading your files. If your application comes in after the deadline, even though you started before the deadline time, it's Eastern time, then you will not be able to be in the competition this year. So better to play it safe and put it in early so you make sure that you have plenty of time to get those documents in. The other thing to be aware of is that grants.gov may reject your proposal if, for example, you forgot to convert a Word doc to a PDF. You'll get a message back from grants.gov, but if you get that message back and it is after the posted deadline of April 13th, Eastern time, then you will not be able to submit again. So these are all just reminders to submit early so that you give yourself plenty of time. Any questions about grants.gov, you please direct them to grants.gov. Their helpline is listed on the screen, 1-800-518-4726. A last screen with some resources before we conclude and move to the question and answer section. I have several of the things I've talked through today. In fact, everything is available on this program resources webpage. That's your first link. On that webpage, you'll find the complete Notice of Funding Opportunity. That's where you'll find all the details about your proposal, about the goals of the program, how to submit your proposal, and that kind of thing. Also there we have sample application narratives. So these are materials that they're actual funded proposals, and to give you an idea not of exactly how you should write your proposal, but rather some of the many different ways applicants have written successful narratives. A word of caution, some of the formatting, such as the work plan being a separate attachment, has changed since some of those narratives were written. So just be aware of that. We have a reminding you of that on the web page, but just to draw your attention to that. Follow the formatting in the current notice of funding opportunity. We do, as I mentioned, provide staff feedback on your draft narratives and work plans. The deadline for that is February 16th, 2022, and you would send it to the faculty awards at NEH.gov mailbox if you would like us to read and respond to your narrative and work plan. You should follow the notice of funding opportunity in terms of the format for that. So a 3-page narrative and a 1-page work plan. Also on the program resources page, we have links to recently funded projects through the program, so you can get an idea of the other types of projects that have come through and been successful. We have a brief FAQ document. And lastly, there's the NEH Awards for Faculty Terms and Conditions. So if you're looking ahead to, what are the responsibilities of a recipient, what are some of the other rules, you can take a look at this link here to find out more about that. And just to emphasize the NEH staff that I've put us last because I wanted to really pause on this point, that we are here to help you. We are delighted to take your calls, to answer your emails. And you can reach us at facultyawards@NEH.gov, or you can get to us at 202-606-8200. And if you are thinking of a project but you're not sure it fits, call us and we're happy to talk to you about it. If you're putting together your application and you had a last minute question, feel free to reach out. We're here to help. And so I think that will conclude my comments on that screen. So I just want to give you our contact information once again before we move to the Q&A, and also with our email box and phone number there. So with that, let's see. I'm going to check with Jacob to see if we have any questions yet from all of you in the audience. So glad you could be here with us today.
Yeah, we have a few questions here that I actually published. I believe I published the answers to, but I thought they were good questions that I thought we would cover. One person asked, again, if we would post the presentation to the NEH website, this presentation that we're doing right now. And the answer is yes, please allow us a week or two to edit the video file and get it uploaded. We did have one person, Mary, that asked if we would make the actual PowerPoint slide file available, and as opposed to the video file, and I wasn't sure what you were planning to do.
Oh, sure. Well, thank you for that request. I'll check here to see what we're currently doing at the agency. I know in the past we've been able to post the slides, so I'll find out, and if we're able to, we will put them up on the program resource page in the same place. Thanks for that question.
We got one question about Interfolio and whether it can be used for submitting letters of recommendation. And the answer to that is no. Our system requires that you enter your referee information into grants.gov, and then we'll receive it. And a couple weeks after the deadline, we'll prompt your referees to submit their letters directly into our system. And I just wanted to add on a related note, we find that the strongest letters are those that pertain to the proposed project and the proposed work plan. So soliciting or reusing a letter that was written for another purpose, a few years ago wouldn't normally be the most advisable thing to do as well. Do you have anything else to add about letters, Mary?
No, thank you, Jacob. That's a great answer. I don't think I have much to add. I agree. Sharing your application materials with the referee is a useful way, and also having a conversation with them about your current work. If they've lost contact with you since a previous time of research, it's good to have them updated on your current stage so they can write a detailed letter for you.
One person asked us if how you should submit the a copy of your draft narrative and work plan if you'd like for NEH staff members to give you feedback. You can submit those to facultyawards@neh.gov by the draft deadline. I think we would accept them both as two separate files and as one file. I don't think there would be an issue with managing that. But thank you for that question. And it'll take us a few weeks to get back to you. Mary, do we know when we'll have our own deadline to write back to everyone?
Well, we certainly will have a deadline. We always try to get, we know that you're under a time pressure to finalize your narrative and work plan. Depending on the volume that we get, we try to get that information back to you about 10 days prior to the actual application deadline. If we can move more quickly, we do so, but we just want to make sure we have enough time. So I would say that at least 10 days prior to the April 13th deadline, we will try to get back to you on an email about what you have submitted on the February 16th draft deadline.
Great. We received one question that was sort of about collaborative projects. And there's a section in the Notice of Funding Opportunity that specifically addresses collaborative projects, but just to quickly cover that, you can apply to this program for work on a collaborative project, but you would be applying individually and you would need to be specifying in the application what you specifically would be doing within the overall larger project. If your collaborator or co-author would also like to apply to the program, that is fine, but again, they would be applying individually and they'd be considered, your applications would be considered separately. And may potentially have the same outcome or different outcomes. Do you have anything to add, Mary?
I think that was perfect, Jacob. Yeah, so please check out the Notice of Funding Opportunity. Just as Jacob mentioned, there's a lot of different permutations for that. It's primarily intended for individual applicants, this program is, but there are cases where people have applied. You can apply for a collaborative project depending, and also we'd be happy to talk to you about your specific project and the details if you want to follow up with an email to us or call us. We can talk it through with you as well. We do have a collaborative research program at NEH, which is intended for larger projects, so with 2 or more participants. It's a separate program, and we could tell you about that as well if you wanted to follow up with us.
We have one question about whether a topic in the field of education would be considered for this award. I want to quickly, I'll turn this over to you, Mary, but I want to quickly just interject that if you have any questions about the suitability of your project for this program, feel free to send us an email giving us sort of a quick overview of your project. We get a lot of questions, from people who are interested, but just want to make sure that their project falls squarely enough within the humanities as we define it. If you're an anthropologist, if you're a sociologist, if you're working in sort of a social science field, feel free to write to us to ask whether your project is a good fit for the program. But I wanted to turn this over to you, Mary, because I'm not sure what the what part of the education field the person is working in, but this program does provide some flexibilities in project type, right, relating to community projects and institutional projects.
Thank you. That's right. I just tried to switch our cameras out. I think it worked. So try to help everyone watching to see the person who's talking. So we don't fund or not fund something in specific fields. Rather, the panelists are going to look at the review criteria for the program. And if you recall from the slides, the first criterion is intellectual significance of the project to the humanities. So you would need to make the case of the significance of your project to the humanities, which is Jacob also was referring to that as well. So I would think about it that way, and also take a look at some of the sample application narratives we have on our website. Take a look at some of the other projects that have been funded through the program, and maybe that will all help you see if your project would fall, within this and be able to make a strong case for significance to the humanities. And again, we're happy to talk with you about your project or to answer emails about it as well. Thank you for that question.
Our next question is about the confirmation of institutional support. That document that we list as recommended but is ultimately required. We recommend that you submit it as part of the application package, and if you receive an award offer without having submitted that, we would ask for it before processing your award offer. The question we received is, does it come directly from the dean or administrator, or do you need to solicit it first and then upload it as part of the application package? And the latter is the case. When we use our system to solicit letters from referees, but not from administrators for this purpose. And I'm not sure if you have anything else to add about this letter, Mary, but I just wanted to throw in that a few weeks ago I was talking with someone who found that after receiving the award offer and going through the process of negotiating dates, start dates and such with her administrators, having this letter that they had already written sort of in her pocket turned out to be helpful for her in making arrangements with her school. So one benefit of submitting it with your application is that it exists and you know that someone's signed off. And the other benefit is that we know someone signed off, and we take comfort in knowing that you'll be able to take the award if you're awarded. Mary?
Yeah, oh, that's great to hear that. I hadn't heard that most recent update, but that's exactly right. That letter, I mean, the goal of the program ultimately is to support the humanities at HBCUs by supporting the individual faculty or staff researcher. And so that's the purpose of this document, is just to, see that your institution is behind you, and that will allow you to take leave, even though your teaching load might be reduced. So it does not have to be a lengthy letter. It's just a document verifying that your institution supports your application request, and that they're aware of the request. But as Jacob indicated, if you don't have that ready to upload with your application at the time of the application, April 13th, you will be able to do that at a later point, but ultimately would need to submit that at the time of award if offered one.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, it does not need to be a recommendation, really. It's really just it can be a very brief letter.
Right.
Sometimes people get a little confused about that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we got probably the most popular question of all time just came in. How many awards do we give?
That's a good question. And if you look at the program resources page, we give you the statistics over the last 5 years for the program, and the average, number of applications received, and the average number of proposals funded. And so I would urge you to take a look at that. And in fact, I'm trying to pull it up myself right now so I can give you the most recent statistics, but that's where you will find that. And all of our grant programs will have that directly on the program resource page.
I believe in the Awards for Faculty program, our success rate is 13% currently, or that's the average.
Yeah, well, and on our webpage, it actually says 12.3% funding ratio, typically 143 proposals a year, 18 awards per year. So that's our program statistics. You have to scroll all the way down to the bottom of the program resource page to find those, but that's where they are. So please take a look if you wish.
And no one asked this question, but I just thought this is a good time to sort of throw in that if you apply and aren't successful, you are welcome to revise and apply again in subsequent years. You'll receive your feedback from panelists. It takes us a few weeks to get that done, but Once you request your panelists' comments, we'll get those to you. And you are certainly welcome to reapply. And oftentimes, many of our winners in any given program or cycle are people who have applied more than once. So just for that.
That's a great point. Thank you. And actually, since we have Daniel here too, it's so nice to have someone from the grants management side, and she is very knowledgeable about all the financial aspects and the terms of the award. So Daniel, if you don't mind, I'll turn to you. Are there questions that you have received in this program that you've seen come up that you wanted to address with the attendees, or there might not be, but I'll put you up there and just give you a second to think about it. And meanwhile, Jacob, if there's other questions or any questions about, those kinds of things, you maybe let us know.
No other grants management related questions right now, Daniel.
Okay.
So I think the questions we probably get most often are about, well, there's two things really. One is how do I get my funds? That probably is the number one question. And once you get your notice of action, there'll be a payment schedule set up, and then they're direct deposited into your account or your university's account. That's always a big question is, can they come through my university? And they can, so that you can keep your benefits and stuff like that. But the university cannot keep anything. This is an individual award. It goes to you. And essentially you're being paid for your time. So that and how, and I saw there was a question in here, what counts as full-time, what counts as part-time? That's always a big question as well. And full-time is your full-time, whatever that is, however many classes you have to teach or however many hours it is, and half-time is half that. It's really kind of your university's policy.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful information to get that out there. Thank you. Jacob, are there other questions that are coming in that you want to share with us?
Yeah, so we have one question here. I'm not, I'll try to answer it as best I can. I believe the question is about, it's about visiting archives outside of the US for the project, and sort of about uncertainty of, I think, of how to propose that or how to report it. I'm not sure if this is related to, obviously, right now with COVID, everyone's plans are always tentative. Mary, do you want to take this then?
Oh, sure. I'm happy to speak to this. So this program can support projects on American topics, on United States topics, on topics on other parts of the globe, and we fund projects in all areas: philosophy, history, literature, linguistics, and so on. So many times applicants will be going to archives in different locations around the globe, and when you're writing your proposal, it's helpful to indicate specifically which archives are you going to, where are these sources, because that can get the panelists very excited about your project. But then also to indicate, that you have access, or if you've thought about it, you've reached out to the archive, or you know them from past research trips, or you have permission to use the materials. With regards to COVID, right now, we ask panelists not to take that into consideration because of the reason that Jacob indicated, that it's a constantly changing situation. So I would do your best diligence on working out what your work plan would be, the places that you would visit, or if you're working from your home office, that's also fine, but you just specify that in the work plan. And ultimately, if you are offered an award and it turns out, all the borders are shut or something, and you can't travel, or for other reasons, you can work with the NEH to modify your work plan You will need program staff and grants management staff. So all the people on our webinar today, the three of us, would look at that revised work plan and either say, okay, this falls within the parameters of what you wanted to do, or we would ask you to make some changes. So I wouldn't let that hold you back. I would put down, what you need to do for your project, what you're aiming to do for the project, and hopefully conditions would allow that. And I would go from there. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and I would just add that we understand that life happens, and so if you had proposed traveling internationally, and then weren't able to during your award period, that would be something you could write in to talk to us about, and we wouldn't sort of it wouldn't really be a problem as long as you found other ways to continue working on your project during the award period. And if you needed to schedule your award period for a different time, other than the dates you originally proposed, that's something we could work on as well. So I would say, just to echo Mary, at the time of application, just really focus on proposing your project as you see it and what seems feasible and doable to you at the time. And then if you do receive an award, we'll continue to work with you over the next months or years if things change.
Thank you. That's great response. I see that we've got about 2 to 3 minutes left for our scheduled time frame. Are there other questions, Jacob, that have come in?
There are a few that I'm going to answer individually, but okay. I don't think we have any more that that I'm going to read out unless anyone out there wants to get one last one in, but I don't have anything else. Mary.
Okay, that's good. And I would just remind you that if we didn't get to your question, please follow up with us on email. We'll respond for sure. And happy if other questions come up after you're viewing this at a later point, you are certainly welcome to write to us on that email or give us a call as well. I would just say I'll conclude with one question that sometimes we get asked. A common question is, should I apply to the Awards for Faculty program or should I apply to the NEH Fellowships program? And this question is addressed to some degree in the frequently asked questions document, so you could take a look at it there. But in general, it's your determination and your choice. We can't really tell you which one would be a better choice. They're both good programs and there's some overlap with them. But the differences between the programs for sure would be that the Awards for Faculty allows part-time work, whereas the Fellowships program, it must be full. And we can also support different kinds of humanities research projects and awards for faculty, such as course revisions, such as community or institutional projects, with more of a goal for that. So if you want to talk it through with the staff, we're also happy to talk to you about it so that you can make the best decision for your project. So Jacob, are there any last minute questions? We're in our last minute here, I think.
No, I think that it seems like everyone's satisfied for now, but if you do have more questions about the program or about your project's suitability for the program, as I said before, feel free to send us an email at facultyawards@neh.gov. We'll try to get back to you as soon as we can. And just want to encourage you to take advantage of the draft deadline if you're able to.
Oh, that's a good reminder. Thank you for that. The concluding thought about the draft. So don't forget, February 16th is the deadline for that. Program deadline is April 13th. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in today to hear about the program. We hope we'll see lots of applications from you and get your questions. And I also want to thank Daniel and Jacob for joining me today and offering their expertise. So thank you to everybody for coming, and we hope we'll see some applications on April 13th and the draft deadline on February 16th. Good wishes to all of you. Thanks again for tuning in.